What would you think if I told you that the history of spirituality, the one we've been told, is incomplete? That the concept of a single supreme God was born not where you think, but in the depths of ancient Africa. For millennia, before the prophets, before the pyramids of Giza, the sands and forests of Africa held the secret of the Creator, a force so vast, so primordial, that the world chose to forget it. Why was the knowledge of one of humanity's earliest and most complex pantheons silenced? Today we will unearth the legend of Olodumare, the forgotten African god. He who created the cosmos, the sky and life itself, and who delegated his power to the gods of nature, the Orishas. His story is not just myth. It is the spiritual matrix that, in disguise, shaped the beliefs of the entire planet. If you're a guardian of knowledge and love, unraveling the mysteries that official history has hidden, this is your place. Take advantage and subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and comment below from which part of the world you're hearing the ancestral call. Get ready. On this journey, you will discover how the concept of Ashé, the universal life force, was born in Africa, and how the wisdom of this primordial god can rewrite everything you know about your own faith. The revelation begins now. The silence of the centuries in pre-biblical Africa, long before we heard the first monotheistic chants echo across the desert, Africa was already the cradle of an immensity of beliefs and gods. Imagine for a moment the vast West African continent, bathed by the Niger River and the banks of the Nile, centuries and centuries before the scriptures we know. There, the spiritual was not a choice. It was the air one breathed. In that era of ancient kingdoms and complex societies, life pulsed in profound harmony with the forces of nature and the cosmos. Every river, every mountain, every star in the night sky had its own spirit, its own oracle, its own deity to be revered. It was a pantheon as rich and diverse as the cultures that nourished it. For these people, the world was not ruled by a single distant lord, but rather by a complex family of divine forces. There were gods of iron, rain, earth, and wisdom, each with a vital role in maintaining universal balance. These were organic beliefs, springing from the earth where their ancestors were buried. The mystery lies precisely in this historical silence that fell upon this golden age of plural spirituality. Where are the scrolls that celebrated these gods, with the same pomp as the Greek or Roman pantheons? It's as if official history has chosen to extinguish the flame, leaving only embers of memory. But make no mistake, even under the weight of centuries, and despite the absence of written records, the wisdom of these pantheons never truly died. It hid in their languages, their rhythms, and their hearts. And amidst this constellation of deities, the figure of a supreme being emerges, the original architect of all. The protagonist, name and primordial nature. At the heart of this pre-biblical vastness, we find the figure of Olodumare, the supreme god of the Yoruba, who hovers above all gods and forces of nature. He is not just a god. He is the very definition of the energy that creates and sustains the universe, the unnameable being who gave rise to everything. His name, which translates as the Master of Destiny, already suggests the magnitude of his power. Olodumare, you see, is not a deity who descends to earth to converse with mortals or engage in daily dramas. He is the essence, the source of Ashé, the life force that permeates creation. He is so immense, so primordial, that he is considered inaccessible, preferring to delegate his functions to the other Orishas, his children and manifestations. His nature is that of the creator who withdraws after his work, observing from afar from heaven, but whose presence is felt in every breath and in every seed that sprouts from the soil. He is the first, the one who existed before time and space. This is where wisdom comes from, understanding that the creative force does not need constant praise. This deity, forgotten by Eurocentric history, carries a profound mystery. If he is the creator of all, the very origin of the energy we call life, why is his mention so rare in the great books of universal history? His absence casts a veil of suspicion over what has been deliberately erased, the very existence of Olodumare as a supreme figure, prior to external influences, forces us to ask, isn't the concept of a single, primordial and omnipotent God and ancestral African wisdom only retold by others in later centuries? This question leads us to the next step, the disappearance of memory, How could such a powerful and primordial force have simply faded from global historical memory? The answer, my friend, lies in the violent collision of worlds and beliefs that followed the period of its flourishing. The rise of empires and the arrival of new faiths, with their own worldviews, were relentless. The new religions, often supported by armies and written texts, thirsted for uniformity. For a single god to be enthroned, the previous pantheons had to be at best demonized, or at worst simply erased from the record. Oral knowledge sacred to Africans became vulnerable. Consider the impact of slavery and colonization, which not only robbed people of their lands, but also attempted to uproot their spiritual roots. It was a brutal attempt to silence the language, the drum, and the memory of our ancestors. The tradition of Olodumare and the Orishas was forced to hide under the cloaks of saints and Christian figures. What happens is that memory doesn't disappear. It transmutes. African sages and priests, in a display of spiritual resilience, hid their gods from plain sight, camouflaging them in syncretism. But this camouflage, though salvific, contributed to the forgetting of their original name and form. Thus, the primordial god began to live in the depths of history, in the corners of the collective unconscious, whispered about in secret in the slave quarters and on the farms, a forced disappearance that ironically ensured his survival. But to understand his greatness, we must unravel how he saw the cosmos, the forgotten cosmology for the people who worshipped Olodumare. The universe was not a place of fear or punishment, but a theater of interconnected forces in constant motion. Cosmology was divided into two great planes: Orun, the invisible world, the abode of the gods and ancestors, and Ashé, the visible world where we live. Olodumare inhabits the highest Orun, from where he oversees everything. But he established a bridge between the worlds, Ashé. This vital and sacred energy is the substance of creation, the force that makes things possible, the power that the Orishas manipulate to maintain balance in Ashé time. In this view, is not linear. It is cyclical, an eternal return where past, present, and future meet in the wisdom of the ancestors. Death for them was not an end, but a transition back to Orun, to join the ancestral family and continue influencing Ashé. This was a profoundly ecological and humanistic cosmology. Human beings were not above nature, but immersed in it, part of a whole. Every action in the visible world had a resonance in the invisible world, and vice versa, demanding responsibility and reverence. This world structure, which gives meaning and purpose to each life, is the key to understanding the true power of the forgotten God. The deepening mystery is how this cosmic story unfolds in the creation legend, which is our next secret to be revealed. The creation myth, the first secrets, the legend of how Olodumare created the universe is, in itself, a lesson in humility and delegation of power. In the beginning there was only water and the primordial God. It was he who commissioned the Orisha Obatala, the king of the white cloth, to shape the solid world. Obatala received from Olodumare a sacred bag containing earth, a chicken, and a palm nut. He threw the earth into the water, and the chicken, as it scratched, scattered the dust and formed the first piece of land, Ili Ife, which means the house that spreads, a tale of simplicity and efficiency. But myth holds a secret about the origin of humanity. It is said that Obatala, after molding the bodies of the first humans from clay, drank too much palm wine and dozed off. Olodumare then breathed the Emi, the breath of life, the soul, into the inert bodies, ensuring that the power to give final life belonged to him alone. This legend is not just a story, it is a map. It reveals that the universe is a shared creation, a dance of forces where the greater creator relies on lesser deities to execute his plan. Their model of divine governance very different from narratives of absolute control. What lies hidden in this myth is the depth of African wisdom. Supreme power is omnipresent, but operates through intermediaries. This delegation of tasks is the origin of the entire pantheon of Orishas. But after all, what are the symbols that carry the energy of this god? That's what we'll discover now. Symbols of hidden divinity. Olodumare, as the supreme being, is not represented by anthropomorphic images, like most gods in other cultures, which is one of his greatest mysteries. After all, how do you draw air or energy itself? His symbols are more subtle, more conceptual, and therefore more profound. His emblems are linked to the totality and purity of creation. The circle, which has neither beginning nor end, represents eternity and the unity of his essence, the uninterrupted cycle of life and death that he oversees. The pure white color, associated with Obatala, his delegate, symbolizes peace, calm, and creation. The sky, the firmament, is his most evident and majestic symbol. He is the owner of the sky, Olorum, the blue dome that covers and observes all. The absence of an icon of direct worship is an act of profound respect and recognition of his transcendence. No one can contain the unlimited, but perhaps the most moving symbol is Ashé itself, the life force. Although not a physical image, it is represented in rituals and objects of power. It is the invisible flow that connects the grain of sand to the human heart, the seal of Olodumare's presence in the world. This abstract, cosmic symbolism is one of the reasons why faith has withstood persecution. How do you destroy the worship of a God who is the sky itself, the very force of life? It is wisdom hidden in simplicity. Now, what did the ancients do to connect with this force? Temples of earth and stars. Where did one worship a God who is heaven itself and the essence of life? Not in imposing stone cathedrals, but in living temples that embraced nature. The sanctuaries of Olodumare and the Orishas were the landscape itself, sacred forests, riverbeds, mounds of earth, and ancient baobab trees. These places of worship, often marked only by a stone circle or an altar under the shade of a tree, were designed to mimic cosmology itself. They were a meeting point between Orun and Aye, where the veil between the worlds was thinnest. The architecture, when present, was organic, made of clay, wood, and straw, respecting the earth and the natural cycle. It wasn't about imprisoning the divine in rigid structures, but rather creating a space where the community could feel the presence of the Ashé emanating from the soil. A fascinating aspect is the alignment of these locations with the stars. Ancient sages observed the sky and knew that Olodumare inhabited the stellar realm. His rituals were timed by the movement of the constellations, transforming the night sky into an immense and silent temple. This reverence for nature, as the first and greatest temple, is an ancient lesson that the modern world seems to have forgotten. The mystery, however, was how the voice of this transcendent God, who did not speak directly, reached his people. That's where the oracles come in. The oracles and the voice of the ancestor, if Olodumare, is a withdrawn God who does not communicate directly with humanity. Who is the spokesperson for this primordial wisdom? The answer lies in the complex and profound divinatory system of Ifa, the oracle of Orunmila, the Orisha of wisdom. The priests and priestesses of Ifa, known as Babalaos and Iyalorixas, were much more than diviners. They were the living guardians of cosmic and ethical knowledge. They memorized the Odu, the thousands of sacred verses that contain history, cosmology, and the ways of life. The oracle was the channel through which Olodumare's will manifested itself, translated by the Orishas. Through cowrie shells, palm oil seeds, or sacred dust, the Babalao read the patterns that revealed destiny, offering solutions, sacrifices, and most importantly, wisdom to correct the course. This communication was vital to the community, as it involved not only predicting the future, but also understanding the present and aligning with the Ashé of the universe. The priest was the village's therapist, historian, judge, and spiritual guide, maintaining cosmic order. The mystery lies in the incredible complexity and philosophical depth of a system that survived the absence of writing and persecution. How did these teachings remain so pure for millennia? The answer lies in the way the knowledge was transmitted, oral tradition as sacred text, while other civilizations built papyrus libraries and carved codes in stone. The people of Olodumare relied on voice and memory. For them, the spoken word, the recited Odu, was not just a record, but the very manifestation of the sacred. The elder's mouth was the temple. Oral tradition is not fragile. It is dynamic. It allowed stories and myths to adapt smoothly, remaining relevant to each new generation, without losing the primordial essence of Olodumare's revelation. Knowledge was alive, breathing, and evolving with the people. The verses of Ifa, which narrate the paths and stories of the Orishas, were memorized with absolute rigor through years of training. Think of thousands of pages of history, philosophy, and ethics stored in the mind of a single Babalawo, transmitted in a rite of passage. This reveals a deep confidence in the human capacity to retain knowledge, a belief in the word, as a vehicle of power. The loss of an elder was, in effect, the burning of an entire library, and they were fully aware of this. Valuing life and wisdom. It's a powerful lesson about where true holiness resides, not in inanimate objects but in conscience. What does this living tradition teach us about morality and justice? This is what the next revelation will show us, drawn directly from ancient ethics. Rituals of connection with the cosmos. The lives of the ancient followers of Olodumare and the Orishas were a constant ritual, an effort to maintain harmony between Orun and Ashé. Each season, each harvest, each birth and each death was a reason to celebrate the flow of Ashé. The greatest of all rituals was not one of supplication, but of reciprocity. The Yam festival, for example, was not just about eating. It was about thanking the earth, the waters, and the Orisha Oksosi, the hunter, for sustenance. A profound understanding that the gift of life demands gratitude. Initiation rituals, such as entry into adulthood or the priesthood, were symbolic journeys of death and rebirth. The initiate was led to relive the creation myth and connect directly with the energy of their Orisha, awakening the latent power within their soul. Music, the drum, was the key to opening the portals. The sacred rhythm was not entertainment. It was a coded language, capable of evoking the Orishas, making the body dance in a trance and allowing the divinity to speak and act through the initiate. These vibrant, sensory ritual practices kept Olodumare's energy circulating in the community. They reinforced the idea that spirituality is lived in the body and in action, not just in contemplation. And what did these actions teach us about how to live? The ethics of ancestry, belief in Olodumare, the creator, and the hierarchy of the Orishas shaped a social ethic of deep interconnection and mutual responsibility. The highest law was not a penal code, but the concept of iwapele, which means gentle character or good conduct. For them, the ultimate spiritual quest was to achieve good character, because good character was the way to live in harmony with the Ashé of Olodumare. This meant being honest, respecting elders, those closest to Orun, and caring for the community and nature. Evil was not seen as a demonic being, but as an imbalance, a lack of Ashé, a deviation from iwapele. The purpose of life was to restore balance, and this was done through the wisdom of the oracle and actions of rectification, not eternal punishment. This ancient wisdom placed the community above the individual. Its destiny was intertwined with the destiny of all. The concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are, finds its deep roots in this ethic of belonging and solidarity. It's a lesson in justice that's more about healing than revenge, more about harmony than dogma. This ancient wisdom leads us to question, could the energy they called Ashé be what modern science seeks to understand? The concept of vital force, or Ashé, is the key to everything. The word that defines the theology of the forgotten God. It is not an object, not a magical power, but the dynamic and sacred energy of Olodumare itself, the essential substance of life, which manifests itself in all that exists. Think of Ashé as the cosmic engine, the force of achievement, the invisible power that makes rivers flow, plants grow, and human beings possess the power of speech. This power was distributed to the Orishas so they could carry out the tasks of creation. The priests and the people sought to accumulate, invoke, and direct Ashé through rituals, offerings, and mainly through good character, iwapele. The more aligned with the universe, the more Ashé a person possessed, the more power of achievement he had. The concept is so universal that it echoes in several other cultures: Chinese Qi, Indian Prana, Polynesian Mana. But the African formulation is perhaps the oldest, suggesting that Africa was the first to codify the idea of a universal life force. Ashé is, therefore, Olodumare's link to the world, living proof of his presence even if distant. The mystery that intrigues us is there physical evidence that this civilization and its rituals are even older than we think? Archaeological mysteries and controversial discoveries. The historical record, often focused on stone and metal, neglected societies that built with organic materials. But archaeology, slowly and stubbornly, is beginning to unearth evidence that rewrites the map of ancient Africa and the antiquity of this faith. In Ile-Ife, the sacred city of Olodumare, Discoveries of terracotta and bronze artifacts reveal an artistic sophistication and social organization that rivals any classical civilization. Dating back much further than history books used to admit, other discoveries, especially in places like Nok, in what is now Nigeria, reveal cultures with complex spiritual traditions, sculptures, and rituals dating back more than 3 millennia. This suggests that the birthplace of Olodumare and the Orishas is older than Rome, and much of what is preached about Africa. There are also controversies surrounding stone, alignments and megalithic structures that appear to have astronomical and ritual functions, predating even the Egyptian pyramids. Could these be the foundations of the first temples dedicated to the sky god? These silent traces are material proof that African spiritual sophistication is not a myth, but a neglected fact. And if these concepts traveled through time, did they also travel through space, connecting with other ancestral peoples? The lost bridges, echoes in other cultures, the concept of a supreme god who creates and withdraws. Delegating power to intermediary gods is not exclusive to Africa, but it is there that it appears to have its earliest formulation. It is impossible not to draw parallels with other civilizations that emerged much later. Consider ancient Egypt, right there at the mouth of the Nile. The concept of Horus, Osiris, and Isis, for example, as gods who rule the earth under a supreme creator, like Amun or Ra, echoes the structure of Olodumare and the Orishas. Could this be a spiritual influence that traveled downstream? Going further back, in ancient Greece, the pantheon of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, though chaotic, also presents a hierarchy of delegated powers. Judeo-Christian monotheism, with its one God and the mediation of angels and saints, reflects in a syncretized form this same delegation of power. The presence of creation myths involving water and earth and the importance of a divine breath of life are universal themes. But Africa, with its proven antiquity, offers a powerful argument for being the original matrix, the first spiritual code. These lost bridges suggest that Olodumare was not simply forgotten. He was repackaged, rechristened, and absorbed into other grand narratives of world history. The mystery is how this wisdom survived the greatest of conflicts, the arrival of change. The conflict with monotheism, the arrival of new faiths, such as Islam and Christianity, in West Africa was not just a religious event. It was a collision of cosmologies. For monotheism, Olodumare was acceptable, but his children, the Orishas, were a problem. The conflict was not just about doctrine, but also about structure. Olodumare's system, which valued nature and ancestry, clashed with religions that saw salvation through a sacred text and a central figure of authority. The repression was intense. The Orishas were labeled demons, their rituals were banned, and earthen temples were replaced by stone mosques and churches. It was a cultural war to erase memory and impose a new spiritual order. But herein lies the genius of survival: syncretism. Instead of abandoning their gods, the people hid them. Iansa became Saint Barbara, Zango became Saint Jerome. The forgotten god Olodumare was easily identified with the Abrahamic god, preserving his supreme position. This strategy isn't weakness, but resilience. It was the ingenious way the African people found to keep the flame of their faith alive, even under the shadow of persecution. But the true test came with the diaspora, the exile of belief. Diaspora and survival, when Olodumare's children were torn from their lands and forced into exile across the Atlantic. The god and his Orishas traveled with them, not on ships but in their hearts, in their drums and secret songs. It was the diaspora of faith. In the New World, the faith was blended, reinvented, and given new names. Santeria in Cuba, Voodoo in Haiti, and Candomblé and Umbanda here in Brazil. It was an act of spiritual creation amidst the horror, a way of maintaining identity. Despite brutal persecution on the new continents, Olodumare, the forgotten god of his land, flourished. His cosmology and his Orisha children became the backbone of vibrant new religions practiced by millions today. This survival proves that the power of Ashé is unbreakable, a treasure the people have carried. They transformed pain into faith and loss into legacy, ensuring that the African creator, even forgotten in official Africa, was rediscovered in the Americas. The story of this spiritual diaspora is the missing link that allows us to see Olodumare not just as a god of the past, but as a living force in the present. But where exactly can we find his face in modern legends? The hidden secret in modern legends, it's fascinating to note how the forgotten god and his orishas have infiltrated popular culture and modern legends, often in ways we don't even realize. They are the whispers behind stories that seem familiar, but carry an ancient flavor. Think of the stories of heroes who must endure elemental trials, fire, water, earth, to reach their destiny. This structure is typical of the myths of the orishas, who represent the primordial forces of nature. It's codified African wisdom. In Brazilian folklore, for example, syncretism is so profound that many characteristics of folklore entities have direct roots in orishas. The power of the forest, the mastery of thunder, the seduction of water. This is the subtle presence of African gods in our imagination. Even in fantasy films and series, the archetype of a pantheon of gods that deals with human emotions and natural elements, something that African mythology dominates, suggests an unconscious influence of the Olodumare structure. The secret lies in unmasking what appears to be mere folklore and recognizing the resilient presence of Ashé. This persistence leads us to the great revelation. What can this lost wisdom teach us today? The revelation of lost wisdom, the forgotten African god upon being rediscovered, brings with it an urgent message for 21st century humanity. It is a wisdom that can heal our disconnection with the natural world and with each other. The first lesson is spiritual ecology. Olodumare, through his Orisha children, teaches us that nature is sacred, that the river, the tree, and the wind are not resources, but extensions of the divine. It is a call to cease destruction and restore the planet's Ashé. The second is the appreciation of community and good character. Iwa Pele is the antidote to individualism. Success is not measured by wealth, but by harmony with the whole. A philosophy of life that could restructure entire societies. Rather than a god of judgment, Olodumare offers us a deity of delegation and harmony who trusts his creations to maintain balance. This gives us the responsibility to be co-creators, not just passive subjects. It's a game-changing revelation. What history has called primitive is actually an ancient spiritual sophistication. This forgotten African wisdom holds the key to our future. But what has been the real impact of these concepts on global thought? The impact on philosophical thought. The legacy of Olodumare and Yoruba cosmology is not restricted to the religious sphere. It is a matrix of thought that has influenced philosophy through circuitous paths. Consider how the concepts of duality, balance, and vital energy have spread. The African concept of Ashé, for example, as an all-pervading force that can be manipulated, echoes in theories of vitalism and schools of thought that seek a universal energy. It is a philosophy born of practice and ritual. Many scholars of the African diaspora argue that the very resilience and capacity for reinvention of the Yoruba faith have become models of study for sociologists and anthropologists, showing how culture can endure and transform under extreme pressure. Iwa Pele's ethics and the importance of good character influence the moral and ethical thinking of entire communities in the Americas, proving that the African philosophy of life is robust and universally applicable. It's an invitation to recognize Africa not only as the cradle of humanity, but as a perennial source of original philosophical thought. It's time to stop seeking wisdom only in the West and look to where the sun rises. The call to remembrance. We have reached the end of this journey, but not the end of history. The forgotten African god is not just a relic of the past. He is a beacon that illuminates the present and points to the future. His story forces us to ask, what else has been silenced? The legacy of Olodumare and the Orishas is an invitation to unearth the true spiritual matrix of humanity, to recognize Africa as a source of complexity, wisdom, and cosmic reverence, and not just as a continent to be explored. Official history has tried to make us forget, but the power of Ashé is greater than time and paper. It vibrates in the drums, in the colors, and in the wisdom of the elders, waiting for us to open our ears and hearts to ancestral memory. Remembering these gods and this cosmology is an act of historical justice and a gateway to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. It is the missing piece in the puzzle of global spirituality. May the silence of centuries be broken by our curiosity. The forgotten God is waiting to be rediscovered, to remind us of the power that resides in the union of heaven, earth, and good.